welcome to Katrina's Creations. This is the Wednesday episode, and today we are going to learn how to dye yarn using Kool-Aid. So let's get started. So before we actually get into the dyeing process, I thought I would show you what some of my previously dyed yarns can look like. These are two different skeins that I have dyed with Kool-Aid in the past. I'll hold them up close so you can see them. This was using a lemonade and I believe blueberry. And then there's this one, which is all different types of colors. And I believe it was orange and grape and cherry and fruit punch combined to do this. Now I'm going to show you three other skeins of yarn that I have dyed using food coloring. Now, food coloring does not have acid in it like the Kool-Aid does, so you need to add acid to it. So when you actually soak the yarn as a pre-soak, you have to add some vinegar in it to give it the acidity that it needs in order to absorb the dye. So let me show you these three. These were done again with a food coloring. We have this one. And then I have two that are very similar. This is greens and pinks. It's looking a little muddy on the screen, but greens and pinks. And then this one was just different shades of green. And these are ones that are in my Etsy shop. So if you are interested in them, I will put a link down below and you can go over and check them out because those are for sale. So let's get started with the actual dye process. Now for the yarn that I am using today, this is undyed. It is 75% merino superwash. Merino is a type of wool. It's actually a type of sheep. Superwash means it's been chemically treated so you can put it in a washing machine. You don't have to hand wash it. So it is a 75% merino superwash and 25% nylon. Now this came originally as two skeins of 400 yards each. I wanted to be able to experiment with the yarn a little bit, so I made it into four skeins of about 200 yards each. So that way I have four skeins of yarn that we can play with today. The two colors I'm going to be dyeing with are orange and grape. My goal is to have one skein that is a solid purple, one skein that is a solid orange with some purple speckles, and then the other two skeins to have one that is orange speckled and one that is orange and purple speckled. So we're going to actually be doing two different dyeing techniques. We're going to be kettle dyeing, which would be for your solid colors, and then we are also going to be doing speckling, which will be using the microwave. So let's now get started and I'll show you how we get this all set up. Now we are at my kitchen sink. I have the sink about a quarter of the way full of just plain tap water, and it's just room temperature, and I am going to put all of the yarn in here, and I want to push it down and so get it good and saturated, and we are going to let it soak for about a half an hour once I get it saturated to begin with. And it's just going to soak. I'm now going to remove two of the hanks of yarn, and they are tied. As you can see, they're tied in a loop because these are going to be put back in a skein when I finish. But I want to press out the majority of the water. I don't want them to be dripping because I don't want my dye to get watered down any. You want to be careful you don't wring them out too much, because if it's raw, untreated wool, you could begin to felt it. You don't want that to happen. Okay, there is one. Now I have two dye baths here. I have this with orange. It's just water. And I've put the orange packet into 8 cups of water. And I'm just stirring it around to make sure it gets dissolved. Over here I have the purple. And I have it, because I want it a little bit denser, I had it in 6 cups of water. Now, I don't have any heat going right now. I'm going to dip the yarn into both. There's the orange. There's the purple. I'm just going to let them saturate for a while. Try not to get my spoons mixed up here, because I don't want orange getting mixed in. I will have brown. So we're going to get these little bits of stirs here and there, and try not to tangle up the yarn. It's making me thirsty smelling the orange. So we're going to let these soak for a little bit until a lot of the color is absorbed into the yarn itself, and the water will look a little bit, hopefully, a little bit more clear as it's absorbed into the yarn itself. So we're going to give it a few minutes to do that. I've now let the color absorb into the yarn, and we're going to turn the stove on at this time, and we're going to bring this to just a low boil for about 20 minutes, and that will set the color into the yarn. So we'll get that turned on and get started. So now while our yarn is coming to a boil and the color is getting set, we're going to begin the next portion of our dyeing, and this is going to be speckling the yarn. Now, I have already gotten most of the water out of this particular skein, and I have a double layer of plastic wrap underneath here. Now I am going to be speckling this with the orange and the grape. You can see which one's which very obviously. And I am going to put a glove on just because I really don't want orange and purple fingers for the next couple days. So we're going to begin with the grape color first, and I kind of spread the yarn out, kind of fluff it open a little bit. I'm going to try to spread this open, and then I'm just going to take this with my fingers and just lightly sprinkle the grape on the yarn. And once I have it all the way around like I do now, I do want to turn my yarn so I make sure to get both sides. And then I want to open it back up again. Like that, so it's spread out. You don't want any bare spots in your yarn. And I'm going to sprinkle some more. That's probably enough with the grape. Now I'm going to sprinkle some of the orange. And I'll be doing the same thing with it. Making sure I get everywhere with it. If you hear some hissing and popping in the background, that is the other yarn on the stove, which is right next to me. You can see the color starting to come through a little bit, and I'm going to turn this so I can get the other side with the orange. And again, I'm going to open it up. Remember, these are just speckled. It's not going to be saturated with color. So it looks like I've got it pretty evenly spread out. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to roll this up, wrapping the plastic wrap around it. You want to make sure it's sealed because you do not want this exploding in your microwave with like Technicolor all over the place. I have done that before and it's not easy to get out. And I'm now going to microwave this for a total of about 6 minutes, but I'll do it 2 minutes and then I'll give it a little bit of a turn. And I just want to make sure that it's the heat that actually is going to set the color, and you can really see the color well in here at this point. So I am going to microwave on high for 2 minutes and then turn it, and I'll continue to do that for about 6 minutes total. It's extremely hot, so I'm actually going to use tongs to touch this, and I'm just going to sit it down on my stove. I'm just going to sit it down on my stove top and let it cool. I'm not going to do anything or touch it at this point. And we're going to check on our pots over here. You can see with the orange that there's hardly any color in the water itself. It's all in the yarn at this point. And that same thing is starting to happen over here with the purple as well. So this one is starting to come to a little bit of a boil. You can see there's little bubbles. The purple hasn't. It was a little bit lower heat. So we're going to let these finish, and then I will come back and we will rinse them out and we'll let them dry. So here is our finished speckled yarn. Here is the orange and the purple. You can see it here. You can see some speckling. And then I did another one that was just orange speckles. So you can see that here. And now let's go over and look at our kettle dyed yarn. This is the orange, and as you can see, the water is now clear because all of the color has been absorbed into the yarn, and the same thing with the purple. Now the purple is completely done at this point, other than I'm going to drain the water out and I'm going to rinse the yarn just to get any excess dye out. The orange I'm going to drain and wring out, but I'm going to apply some purple speckles to it. So the final step is that you wash it thoroughly just to get any excess dye out of the yarn, and then you leave it outside to dry, or you can just dry it someplace where it's warm and air dry it. You're not going to put it in the dryer. And so I'm going to do that and come back and show you what the finished product looks like. So now our yarn is finished drying, and I have it all put back up into a skein. So let me show you close up what it looks like. Here is our variegated speckled orange. This is one of my favorites. This is probably my other favorite. I really like the speckles. And then we have this one, which kind of reminds me of, my husband said Halloween, because the purple almost turned out like a dark brownish black, because when you mix orange and purple together, you get black. So that is it here, but it's still a speckled yarn. And then I have a tonal purple. And tonal, as you can see, what it means is it's not a solid, it's a semi-solid color. In other words, you might have light and dark shades of purple it's not all the same color. And you can see it's very much a tonal purple. So here's what they all look like together. So I think if I'm going to make something, I may be going to start with this color and then move to this one and then move to this one. And then finish with this. So, yeah, not sure what I'm going to make with it at this point, but this has to be one of my more successful dyeing events yet. But these two are my absolute favorites, and I think they go so well together. So I hope you've enjoyed this dyeing. I did learn the technique by watching ChemKnits. It is a YouTube channel called chemknits.com over on YouTube, and she does lots of other dyeing as well. And so I learned, like I said, this technique from watching her. So you might want to, if you want to learn a little bit more about other types of dyes and ways to dye, that would be a good one to check out. So thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed this video, please give me a thumbs up and click that little red subscribe button, and I'll see you again soon.